He mocked God every night of Ramadan, and everyone laughed until the night the silence answered him back. What could make a man born with power suddenly afraid to be alone in the dark? My name is Salman, and I am 29. I was laughing when the story began. The prayer hall smelled of rose water and warm carpet. Gold lamps hung above us, shining like small suns. Rows of men stood shoulder to shoulder. The Imam's voice moved slow and deep through the speakers. My family listened with still faces. I leaned toward my cousin and copied the Imam's tone in a whisper, stretching the words in a dramatic way. My cousin bit his lip to stop laughing. I made my eyes wide and raised my hands the way the Imam did. My shoulders shook as I tried not to laugh out loud. Then I said softly, "Fear the fire," and added, "But not my driver's car." The cousin beside me snorted. A few heads turned. I hid my smile behind my sleeve. When the prayer ended, people made dua quietly. I opened my phone. I recorded myself repeating the sermon voice again. I made my face serious and shook my finger at the camera. My friends loved these videos. They said I sounded better than the real speakers. Outside the hall, the night air felt cool on my skin. Lanterns swayed in the courtyard. Dates sat on silver trays. Servants poured tea. I showed the video to two friends. They bent forward, laughing so hard the cups rattled on the table. One of them said I should post it in our private group. I did. Within minutes, messages flooded the screen. More laughter, more praise. I felt tall inside my chest, taller than the palace walls. My uncle walked by slowly. His beard moved in the soft wind. He stopped and looked at my phone still glowing in my hand. "Son," he said gently, "jokes about faith leave marks you cannot see." I smiled politely. "It is only humor," I said. "God knows my heart." He held my gaze longer than I liked. "Yes," he answered quietly. "That is exactly why you should be careful." I nodded but did not think about it again. The next night, a visiting scholar spoke. His voice was not loud, but it carried. He spoke about pride. He said some men think their name protects them. Some think wealth is a shield. Some think status lifts them above warning. I leaned toward my cousin and whispered, "Then heaven will be empty without us." This time my cousin laughed louder than before. The sound echoed across the hall. The scholar stopped speaking. Silence fell heavy like a thick blanket. He turned his head slowly. His eyes met mine, not angry, not shouting, just sad. For a second, my stomach tightened. My chest felt hollow, like I had missed a step in the dark. I lifted my chin and smiled wider than before. After the prayer, I made another video, copying his soft voice and sad face. The group chat exploded again. I went to sleep proud. But I woke before dawn. My room was dark blue with early light. The clock read 3:18. My heart beat fast as if I had been running. I listened. Nothing. No footsteps, no doors. Still my chest felt tight. I drank water and laughed at myself. Maybe too much coffee, I thought. I slept again. The next day I felt normal. By evening I forgot the moment completely. The second night it happened again. I woke at 3:11. Same pounding heart. Same strange feeling that someone had stood near my bed a second before I opened my eyes. I sat up and looked around. Curtains barely moved in the air from the vent. The room smelled faintly of oud. Everything was normal, yet I did not lie down for a long time. I told no one. At the mosque that evening, I joked louder than before, almost to prove I was fine. When the Imam recited verses about the day people stand and answer for their deeds, I whispered the words ahead of him in a dramatic voice. My friend covered his face, trying not to laugh, but during the recitation, For a moment, the speaker crackled and cut. The Imam's lips moved, but no sound came. Yet I heard the verse clearly beside my ear. Not loud, not from the speaker. Close. I turned fast. No one stood there. The sound returned to the speaker, and the prayer continued. I stared forward, but the words no longer sounded the same. They felt near, like breath on my skin. After prayer, I stepped outside quickly. The courtyard air felt colder than before. I told myself it was imagination. I repeated it many times. Imagination. That night I delayed sleep. When I finally slept, I dreamed. I stood on open ground wider than the desert. The sun hung low and huge. People stood everywhere, silent, waiting. No buildings, no cars, only flat land and heat pressing down. Someone behind me whispered my name. I turned and woke. My pillow was wet with sweat. The clock read 4:02. The call to prayer began seconds later. I did not sleep again. The next days I felt restless. I recorded fewer videos but still made jokes in person. I needed the laughter. Without it, the silence felt too loud in my head. At dinner, my mother touched my arm. She asked if I was tired. I told her I stayed up late with friends. That was easier than truth I did not understand. On the fifth night, I tried to sleep early. The palace hallways were quiet. Even the guards spoke softly. Ramadan nights carried a gentle calm usually, but my chest felt heavy before I closed my eyes. I woke again before dawn. This time I heard recitation, soft, clear, slow. It came from the corridor. I stood and opened the door. The marble floor felt cold under my feet. The hallway lights were dim. The sound stopped instantly. I walked down the corridor. My steps echoed lightly. Every door closed, every lamp still. Nothing moved. I stood there a long time. Then far away, the real call to prayer began from the city. Only then did I realize my hands were shaking. The next evening, I almost skipped the mosque, but pride pushed me to go. I sat in the back this time. I did not joke at first. I listened. The Imam spoke about hearts that grow hard slowly, like stone under sun. He said sometimes a man laughs at reminders until he cannot feel them anymore. I forced a smile and whispered a joke again, but the words tasted dry in my mouth. My cousin did not laugh this time. When the prayer ended, I left quickly without recording anything. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. The room felt too large. Every small sound seemed louder than it should be. The air conditioner hummed like distant wind across empty land. I closed my eyes and waited, unsure if I feared the dreams or feared that they might stop. The night smelled sharp. It like cold metal and smoke from last week's incense. My name is Salman, and I am 29. And for the first time, I felt fear that I could not laugh away. I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands pressed hard into the soft silk sheets. The clock read 2:57 a.m., and every shadow in the room seemed alive. My pulse beat so loud it drowned out the hum of the air conditioner. Outside, the palace grounds were quiet except for the occasional whisper of wind through the palm trees. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. It had to be nothing. But the emptiness felt heavy, pressing against my chest, like someone invisible was leaning there. The memory of the corridor still haunted me. I saw it again in my mind. The marble floor, polished until it shone like water. The dim lamps casting long, slow shadows. And the silence that was so thick it seemed to hum. I had walked slowly, trying to convince myself that nothing had moved, nothing had spoken. But when the city's call to prayer sounded far away, I had realized my hands were trembling. I forced myself up and went to the window. The city lights twinkled below, tiny fires scattered across black cloth. I could hear faint voices, distant calls to prayer, the soft rolling of tires on empty streets. For a moment, I thought of my friends laughing at the videos I had made, how safe and powerful I had felt. That pride seemed far away now, replaced with something I could not name. The next morning, I went to the mosque reluctantly. The carpet smelled faintly of sandalwood. I tried to sit quietly, to disappear into the rows of worshippers, but the Imam's voice drew my attention immediately. He spoke slowly, carefully, about arrogance and mockery, thus and about how laughter at sacred words could leave invisible scars. I swallowed hard. I wanted to joke, to whisper a mocking echo as I had before, but my mouth was dry and my throat felt blocked. I glanced at my cousin. He seemed tense, his usual laughter gone. The other men around me prayed with steady faces, their eyes closed, their hands open. I wanted to join them fully, but I could not. I wanted to run, to leave before anyone noticed. The Imam's eyes were not on me directly, but I felt them like a shadow stretching across my chest. After the prayer, I lingered outside. The courtyard was cool, the night sky deep blue. Lanterns swayed gently. I watched the shadows flicker on the walls, shifting with the wind. A servant brought tea, its steam curling in lazy spirals. I sipped slowly, trying to calm my pulse. My fingers trembled slightly, and I hoped no one noticed. That night, I heard it again. The voice soft, clear, reciting the verses I had mocked. Not from the speakers, not from the mosque, from inside my own room. My heart slammed against my ribs. I froze, listening. The words were not angry, not harsh, just steady, patient, and close. I stepped out of bed slowly, my bare feet brushing the cold floor. Every step echoed lightly. The curtains stirred in a faint breeze. The perfume of oud lingered, heavier than usual. I followed the voice to the corner of the room. Nothing was there. The voice stopped. My pulse slowed only a little. I wanted to leave the room, to escape the palace, to run into the city streets. But I stayed. Sleep became impossible. Each night I woke between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., always at the same hour, always with the same heavy feeling in my chest. My mind raced. Was it a dream, a warning, or something more? I avoided making videos, avoided joking. My friends noticed. They asked why I was quiet, and I smiled and said nothing important. One evening, my uncle found me in the hall. He had seen the change. His eyes were kind, but there was worry in them. "Salman," he said softly, "sometimes what is hidden cannot be ignored forever. Pride can blind even the strongest of men." I looked away. I did not know how to explain the nights, the voices, the weight that pressed against my chest. I wandered the palace gardens alone. The fountains whispered, palm leaves rustled like soft whispers. The moon hung low, pale and heavy. I stopped by a reflecting pool. My face stared back, pale in the water. I saw the corners of my mouth, once lifted in laughter, now pressed tight. I realized the man in the water was smaller than I had imagined, vulnerable, fragile. That night I dreamed again. I stood in an endless desert, golden sand stretching past the horizon. The sky burned pink and orange, a sun hanging heavy above. People stood in rows, silently staring at me. My laughter was gone, my pride dissolved. Behind me, a voice whispered my name, not mocking, not angry, just warning. I woke sweating, my body trembling. The next day at the mosque, I could not look at anyone. My eyes focused on the carpet, tracing the patterns of flowers and vines. The Imam spoke again, and every word felt heavier than the last. About respect, about humility, about consequences no one could see until it was too late. I wanted to sink into the carpet, to disappear entirely. That night, I could not sleep. The voice returned, louder now, stronger. It was not cruel, but it demanded attention. I whispered apologies in my bed, even though I did not know if anyone heard. My hands shook, my chest felt tight, my pride began to crumble brick by brick. And then, one evening, everything changed. I saw a small bird land on my balcony. It looked ordinary, yet its eyes were bright, unafraid. I watched it for minutes. Then it sang a single clear note. The note felt like a call, like a reminder that I was still alive, still capable of change. I felt a shiver of hope, the first in days. But hope frightened me as much as fear. Could a man like me, who had mocked what was sacred, ever truly change? What would happen if I answered the call I had been avoiding all this time? The morning light spilled into my room in long golden strips, but it did not warm me. My name is Salman, and I am 29, yet I felt older than my years, weighed down by the nights that would not let me rest. I sat on the edge of my bed, the sheets tangled around my legs, staring at the small wooden Quran on my desk. Its cover was worn, the edges frayed from hands I did not recognize. For the first time, I felt a longing for it, not as a tool for laughter or mockery, but as something I might actually understand. The palace felt different that day. The usual clamor of servants and guards was present, but it seemed muted, distant. Each footstep echoed in my mind. I wandered through the hallways, brushing my hand against the cool marble walls, trying to steady the storm in my chest. The laughter that once surged freely in my heart had vanished. In its place was a cautious silence, an emptiness that demanded attention. I walked into the mosque alone, earlier than anyone else. The carpet smelled faintly of dust and incense. Lanterns flickered as if breathing softly, and the air held the faint metallic tang of morning dew. I knelt and placed my forehead against the floor. The cool fibers pressed into my skin, grounding me, forcing me to focus on a single point. The space between the ground and the roof, the thin line between humility and pride. My breath came slow at first, then quickened as memories of my past arrogance surfaced, each one sharp and cutting. I thought of my cousins, my friends, the videos I had shared, the laughter that had echoed through the palace halls. Each memory felt distant yet alive, as though the walls themselves remembered. I clenched my fists against the carpet, feeling shame rise like heat in my chest. The Imam arrived shortly after, and his presence filled the room, calm yet commanding. I did not look at him. My eyes stayed on the floor, tracing the intricate patterns of the carpet, afraid that one glance might betray my trembling. The Imam spoke slowly, every word deliberate. He told stories of those who had mocked the sacred and how their laughter had turned to silence, how arrogance could blind the brightest hearts. I swallowed hard. I wanted to speak, to challenge, to make a joke, but the words stuck in my throat. My pride felt fragile, yet it still clung to me like a shadow. After the sermon, I remained kneeling, unwilling to move. The mosque emptied slowly, footsteps echoing, doors closing gently. I stayed, alone with the scent of sandalwood and the whisper of the wind through open windows. A small bird landed near the fountain outside, its tiny body trembling in the morning light. It chirped a single note, clear and unwavering, and my chest ached in a way that was unfamiliar. Hope mixed with fear. Could I truly change? Later, in my study, I opened the Quran. My hands shook as I turned the pages. Each word felt alive, almost glowing against the soft cream paper. I read slowly, aloud at first, then silently, letting the verses settle into the corners of my mind. For the first time, I questioned not what I could mock, but what I had ignored. Each phrase seemed to hold a mirror to my life, reflecting my arrogance, my doubt, and my fear. The night came quickly. The palace was quiet again, but this time the silence was different. It was not heavy and oppressive, it was expectant. I knelt at my bedside, the Quran open before me. The voice returned clearer now, not a whisper, but a presence that filled the room. It was not angry, it was patient, guiding. I listened, my body still, my heart pounding, as it recited verses I had never understood before. My eyes filled with tears, warm and stinging, running down my cheeks onto the silk sheets. I remembered my laughter in the mosque, my videos, the mocking tone that had filled the palace halls. I felt each echo of that pride now, sharp and raw, but softened by a strange weight, the possibility of forgiveness. I realized that the nights, the voices, the sleepless hours, they had not been punishment. They had been a call, a tug at the part of me I had tried to hide even from myself. By midnight, I felt a stirring deep in my chest. It was not like fear, not exactly like hope. It was something more fragile, a trembling awareness that I could choose differently. I knelt in the palace courtyard, under a sky thick with stars. The fountains whispered around me, the palm trees swayed gently. I whispered a prayer, not for show, not for others, but for myself. My voice shook, but the words came, carried on the night air. I slept for only a few hours before the morning call to prayer. I rose with my heart heavy, yet lighter than it had been for weeks. The halls were filled with servants and guards beginning their routines, but their presence felt distant, almost irrelevant. What mattered was the space between me and the world, the choice I was beginning to make inside myself. That afternoon, the Imam approached me. His eyes were calm, steady, almost knowing. "Salman," he said quietly, "the path is not easy. The heart is tested not when it is full of pride, but when it is empty and searching." I nodded, my throat tight. I could not speak, not yet. But inside, a small ember of understanding had been lit. The days passed, each one blending into the next. I began to speak differently, act differently, even laugh differently. The mocking videos were gone. My voice carried a softness I had never known. And yet, the fear lingered, a shadow at the edges of my awareness, reminding me that change was not guaranteed. One evening, I wandered the palace gardens. The moon was low and golden, lanterns casting small circles of light. I stopped by a reflecting pool, staring at my own face. The man looking back was not the man I had been. His eyes held questions, and perhaps for the first time, the beginnings of answers. I touched the water, rippling my reflection, and whispered, "Can I really leave my pride behind completely? Would the path I had finally chosen hold, or was I still walking on the edge of the same darkness that had haunted me for weeks?" The dawn broke with a pale light spilling across the palace courtyard. My name is Salman, and I am 29. I stepped barefoot onto the cool marble, feeling the chill sink into my skin. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and sand, a soft mixture that made my chest tighten with awareness. Today felt different, not because the palace was louder or quieter, but because I felt it, the weight of every choice I had made in the last days pressing down on me like the heavy sky above. I walked slowly towards the mosque, my shadow stretching long and thin behind me. Lanterns hung low, swaying in the morning breeze. I remembered the laughter I once carried here, the mocking whispers of sermons that I had shared like trophies with my friends. That laughter had vanished. Now the walls seemed to watch, the quietness demanding attention. I could feel each tile beneath my feet cold and smooth, a reminder that the world moved even when I stood still. Inside, the Imam was already speaking, his voice low and rhythmic. Each word sank deep into me, stirring emotions I had tried to bury. I sank to my knees, hands flat on the carpet, forehead brushing the soft patterns. The words were no longer empty sounds. They struck chords in my heart, each one vibrating through me like ripples on water. I felt a shiver run down my spine as he recounted stories of those who had walked the path of arrogance only to find emptiness waiting at the end. I glanced at the rows of worshippers around me, faces blurred, voices blending into a quiet hum. I realized I was holding my breath. My palms were damp and my chest ached with a strange mixture of fear and yearning. The Imam paused, looking toward the back of the mosque where I knelt. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and I felt a piercing clarity, as if the room itself had drawn a line in the sand. There was no turning back. After the sermon, I lingered in the mosque, alone. The air smelled faintly of incense and old wood. I traced my fingers over the carved edges of the Quran on the small wooden stand, feeling the grooves beneath my fingertips. Each letter seemed to glow in the dim light. I whispered verses under my breath, testing them, tasting their weight on my tongue. The world outside seemed distant, almost unreal. Only the words mattered, only the meaning. I left the mosque slowly, stepping into the gardens. The sun was higher now, warming the marble paths and glinting off the fountains. Water shimmered in the morning light, casting tiny dancing shadows on the palm fronds. I knelt beside the reflecting pool, staring at my own face. The man looking back was the same, yet somehow different. His eyes held questions, fear, and a trembling hope that had not been there before. I dipped my fingers in the water, watching ripples distort my reflection. Memories flooded in. The videos I had posted, the laughter I had shared, the mocking tone in my voice, each memory now a heavy stone in my chest. I felt the weight of my actions pressing down, yet beneath it was a fragile spark of understanding. For the first time, I wanted to undo what I had done, not for others, not for approval, but because the emptiness inside me demanded it. That night, I stood in the palace balcony, staring at the moon. The air was cool against my skin, carrying whispers from the gardens below. Lanterns flickered in the distance, casting soft halos of light. I whispered a prayer, small and uncertain, letting the words tumble from my lips like fragile glass. My voice shook, my chest tightened, and yet, for the first time in weeks, I felt a stillness that was not fear. It was a fragile peace, fragile but real. I returned to my chambers, the Quran open before me. I read, letting the verses settle into my heart. The words no longer felt foreign or distant. They touched the corners of my mind, awakening parts of me I had ignored. I felt my shoulders relax, my hands unclench. I could feel change pressing gently, insistently against the walls I had built around my heart. As I lay down to sleep, the night thick around the palace, I felt a whisper of something I had not known before. Possibility. The past was heavy, yes, but it did not have to define me. I closed my eyes, the scent of jasmine and the cool marble lingering in my mind. But even in this fragile peace, a question remained, sharper than the night air. Could I truly walk this path without turning back to the pride I had carried for so long? The morning sun spilled gold across the courtyard, warm against my bare feet. My name is Salman and I am 29. I stood at the edge of the palace garden, feeling the cool marble under my toes, the soft rustle of palm fronds brushing in the breeze. Today was different. Today I could feel it in every breath, in every heartbeat. A weight lifting from my chest. The echoes of laughter and mockery that had followed me for days seemed distant, like a storm finally passing. I walked toward the mosque, each step deliberate, my shadow stretching long across the smooth tiles. Inside, the Imam waited, his eyes calm, steady. The congregation's murmurs quieted as I entered, and a hush settled like a soft blanket over the room. I knelt in the back, hands pressed to the carpet, forehead touching the cool patterns. The verses flowed around me, gentle yet powerful, wrapping the empty spaces inside me with light. My chest ached as I felt tears sting my eyes, but they were not shameful tears. They were cleansing, soft as morning mist. The Imam's voice rose and fell, each word striking a chord deep within me. I remembered the pride I had carried, the jokes, the mocking tone I had shared with friends. That man felt like a stranger now. I could feel the truth of each story, each warning, pressing gently against my heart. The words were not distant sounds. They were alive, moving inside me like rivers of light, washing away all doubts and fears. After the sermon, I stayed behind, alone in the soft quiet. The air smelled of incense and polished wood. I traced my fingers over the carved edges of the Quran on the small stand, feeling the letters beneath my fingertips. I whispered the verses again, letting the sounds sink into my bones. I breathed slowly, letting the rhythm of the words anchor me. The world outside felt distant, almost unreal. Only the meaning mattered, only the truth. I stepped into the gardens, the sun now high, warming the marble paths. Water shimmered in the fountain, casting tiny reflections that danced like fire across the tiles. I knelt beside the pool, watching my own reflection ripple and shift. The man looking back was the same, yes, but transformed. His eyes held clarity, a quiet strength, and a new kind of humility. I dipped my fingers into the water, letting the coolness remind me that change is real, that I could start again. By evening, the palace seemed still, the lanterns flickering softly in the twilight. I sat alone on the balcony, the scent of jasmine thick in the air, my chest full yet calm. I whispered prayers, small and steady, letting the words fill the spaces I had ignored for so long. I knew the path ahead would not be easy, that pride and doubt might return. But for the first time, I felt hope. Not the hollow kind, but something steady and true. And as the stars emerged one by one above the desert sky, I asked myself the question that had haunted me for weeks. Could one heart truly change, even when it had been so full of mockery and doubt? Tonight, I felt the answer might finally be yes.